The next speaker, we're going to be speaking on political economy, or power alternatives, and development pathways. And this is coming from the executive director of We the People, an NGO based in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. He is one of the clearest thinkers and researchers when it comes to issues of energy, power, and social accountability. He thinks outside the box, and I believe we're going to learn a lot from him at this time. So, Henshaw, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Reverend, for those very, very kind and touching words. And thank you so much, participants, and thank you for the fantastic first presentation and the opener. I'm going to be speaking on political economy, power alternatives, and the development pathways. While I'm going to be taking my examples and narrative from the particular and peculiar Nigeria context, the realities of what I'm going to be speaking about tends to speak to the broader and larger sub-Saharan African framework, and indeed most developing countries in the world. And so, because what I'm going to be talking about is on a new concept that is not very familiar to many people, I will use the first two slides to basically describe what political economy actually means. And so, in simple terms, political economy is politics and economics viewed and considered integrally, viewed and considered together. Now, as the name suggests, political economy is concerned with how political forces influence the economy and economic outcomes, and vice versa. The thinking around political economy is that it's impossible for us to analyze economic issues without taking into consideration their political influences and their political ramifications. Now, key elements of political economy include how people as individuals and interest groups interact to pursue specific interests with different ideas, means of influence, and how they use institutions in a given context. Political economy analysis is concerned with the interaction of political and economic processes within a society, the distribution of power and wealth between different groups and individuals, and the processes that create, sustain, and transform these relationships over time. Now, this chart basically shows authority and power integrate with formal and informal institutions and are impacted on by values and ideas. The thinking, essentially, that politics stands alone and economics stands alone has, since the 19th century, been defeated. The new thinking is that these different elements interact one with the other, and that political decisions are not purely done for the sake of taking correct political decisions, but are essentially influenced also by economic considerations, which themselves are pushed by interests, values, and different conflicting ideas. So we'll talk now about the political economy of the Nigeria power sector. I said that I'm going to drive my presentation towards the Nigerian power sector. Now, there are three key political economic perspectives of the Nigerian power sector. Three key political economic perspectives. The first is that the process of generating and distributing power has traditionally followed Nigeria's very faulty political framework, which emphasizes central control. So the thinking that has informed the political economy of the Nigerian power sector is the same thinking that has basically controlled the Nigerian governance system, which is the centralized control by a central authority. And along the lines of this political economy perspective, all infrastructure and policies for generating and controlling the supply of power is placed within the control of the central government, pretty much in the same manner the Nigerian government has always functioned, a central system. Now, the need to distribute appointments, to decide which constituency to locate power infrastructure, how to appoint a minister of power, special advisor for power, and all that largesse which is shared, is partly responsible for why this system keeps failing It is the reason, it's the political economy thinking that has kept the energy sector in the hands of the central government. In this framework, efficiency and service delivery means nothing. Efficiency and service delivery in the power sector means absolutely nothing. What is important is that the central authority controls it and is able to distribute benefits that accrue, pecuniary benefits that accrue through the central control of the power sector. Now, the second political economy framework deals principally with the manner power is generated in Nigeria, the generation system of power in Nigeria. Now, in the Nigerian power sector has exhibited an ever-increasing reliance on fossil fuel technology for the generation of power. That's the political economy thinking. Now, while the country has the natural capacity to generate appreciable power through hydro, solar, wind, and many other renewable sources, Nigeria continues to prefer gas power turbines for power generation. So if you look at the different Nigerian energy roadmap, the power sector roadmap, the emphasis, the political economy thinking behind it is still that we must generate power through fossil fuel, through gas turbines and all that, which rely on gases extracted in the most impure and criminal ways. Again, this is the fallout of a political economy paradigm that emphasizes reckless and unending extractivism and continued dependence on fossil fuels. It follows the same pattern of fossil fuel sector management in Nigeria with its contracts and corruption. Okay, so the idea is that Nigeria's power sector will follow the same pattern of the Nigerian economy and the Nigerian system, the over-dependent on extractivism and the corruption in mismanagement and fiat, which comes from the fossil fuel sector in Nigeria. That's the second political economy framework in the power sector in Nigeria. The third one is a more recent emergence, and it reflects the character of the recent power sector reforms in Nigeria. We have had the power sector reforms in Nigeria, which is based on the 2005 Electric Power Sector Reform Act, 2010 Roadmap for Power Sector Reform, and subsequently the 2013 Roadmap for Power Sector Reform Provision 1, right? These are the current power conversation policy in Nigeria has been framed along the lines of these different power sector reforms in Nigeria. Now, the generation and distribution of power is not perceived by the government as a primary social contract duty, which it owes citizens, and which it is required that the government does in the development of the country. No, if you read all this document, there is no emphasis on power access to power as being a social contract responsibility of the government that the people have a right to. Instead, it is viewed strictly as a business. In all these documents, if you have taken time to analyze them, the key emphasis is on the business side of it. These reforms include the diversification of power sources. Okay, so if you read this document, it pays lip service to the diversification of the different power sources in Nigeria. It talks about movement to hydro, to solar power, to wind energy, and so on and so forth. But what has happened in the last 1 decade or thereabout indicates that the government has not paid any attention to these other aspects. What it has concentrated more on is on the market-driven electricity framework, access to power framework. The market-driven part of it is the third political economy framework of the power sector in Nigeria, that power generation and distribution is a market that must be sold to generate revenue. And it is not seen as a right, a development right of citizens. That's the third political economy framework which guides the power sector in Nigeria. And so, ladies and gentlemen, based on these political economy frameworks around the power sector in Nigeria, what has happened? What has been the outcome of the power sector in Nigeria? Power outage is still common and daily experience in Nigeria. And indeed, Nigeria is one of the countries with the lowest electricity consumption per capita in the entire world. Given the access, the opportunities that exist in Nigeria for power generation and distribution in this country, this is actually a very shameful reality. Nigeria's installed capacity remains as low as 10,000 megawatts. Some people say it's up to 13,000 megawatts, but it doesn't really matter. it doesn't really matter, because what we can actually transmit lines that exist in the country, which we currently need in terms of power.
Hello, Mr. Ken, we're losing you.
Currently, we're merely generating right. Now, this cross in the, oh, you're losing me. Hello, can you hear me?
Clearly now, better.
Am I audible now? Okay,
Yes.
I'm audible now. Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
Now, the gross inadequacy of energy generation becomes very glaring in Nigeria when it is compared to the energy outputs for another African country like South Africa. Okay, it shows just how, compared to the population of both countries, it shows just how poor our energy generation is in the country. Okay, so much so that when the Nigerian energy company was called NEPA, Nigerians renamed it Never Expect Power Always. And when it was renamed PHC and Nigeria renamed it, problem has changed name, you know, and this shows how Nigerians think about the power sector in the country. Now, the chart on your screen basically shows a comparison between Nigeria's power outages and those of other African countries. So the first four are a comparison between the Central African Republic, Angola, Nigeria, and then Zimbabwe. Nigeria is third in terms of power outages in the entire in all the countries compared here. What that basically indicates is that Nigeria's power sector is only better than countries in crisis like Angola, Central African Republic, and Zimbabwe. That's what these countries have in common. And Nigeria finds itself, in terms of power outages within the framework of these countries, performing very, very poorly. The reality, ladies and gentlemen, is that about 55 to 60% of Nigerians are said to lack access to electricity. 55 to 60% of Nigerians lack access to electricity. Now, an energy needs assessment published by Delbeck in 2017 states that there are 27.9, about 28 million households in Nigeria lack access to energy in Nigeria. And the United Nations Human Development Index cites access to electricity as being the key, being necessary for increased economic growth, employment, entrepreneurial opportunities, as well as higher quality of human life. It cites access to electricity as being very important for this. So, what does the power sector failure really mean for Nigerians? With this nagging lack, what pathways are available to change the energy narrative in Nigeria? The solution to Nigeria's energy crisis must have three critical elements. For us to solve the current power and energy crisis in this country, those solutions must necessarily stand on a tripod of three elements. The first is that it must be based on renewable technology that takes us away from the destructive dependence on fossil fuel. And the reason for this is quite simple. The current climate crisis in the world necessarily necessitates us to move away from an energy resource, an energy framework that is basically destroying, destroying our planet, and Nigeria stands on the first line charge of the destruction of the planet caused by the use of fossil fuel. So we must move away from technology that is destructive to technology that is renewable and clean. Which must inform democratically owned and economically framework around power. The fact is that the political economy is one, fossil fuel electricity. That political economy alienates them from what the United Nations calls the better life, alienates them, denies them access to living a life.
Mr. Ken, your network is fluctuating a lot.
So it goes beyond just
Hello, Mr. Ken. Can you hear me? We have totally lost audio from your
yes,
end.
funny, so am I back? Yes, I'm hearing you. Am I back now?
I think you're back now. Go
no,
ahead,
you haven't
sir.
lost me. I'm right here. Are you hearing me?
No, I've not lost you. You're
okay,
here.
I'll just try and round up very quickly so I don't. Okay, I'll just round up quickly. And so the first framework for an alternative, the first framework for an alternative is that it must be based on clean energy that is also renewable. The second is that it must be democratically owned and controlled in a manner that changes the prevailing political economy around power in Nigeria. Third framework is that it must be accessible to everyone as a fundamental development right, not as a market-driven solution, but as a right, a fundamental right of every citizen. These are the three elements that must inform what alternatives we adopt for the power sector in Nigeria. Now, Nigeria has a high potential, and I think that those solutions, like I said, must be clean and renewable. Nigeria has a high potential for clean energy that remains largely untapped and underutilized. For instance, the country's potential in technically exploitable large-scale hydropower is estimated to be more than 10,000 megawatts, with the capacity to produce about 36,000 GWh of electricity annually, which is huge, which can basically solve a good percentage of Nigeria's energy problem. Hydro alone. But we are currently not using that. We also have fantastic potentials. Is largely agrarian. We generate a lot of biomass that can contribute significantly into generating energy and is clean. Nigeria is also situated in a Henshaw in all parts of the country, giving it the potential to generate source is currently not being used. Nigeria also has great wind energy. I've been to a place in Brass. Brass is it's an old city in Bayelsa State where the wind power is so strong that if you're in a hotel in Brass, you do not need to turn on the AC or the fan. The wind power is so much. And I've often said that the wind generated around Brass, the island of Brass, is enough to produce electricity that powers the whole of Brass. But Brass is still run on gas-powered turbines up till now. Brass is still connected to the very epileptic and faulty Nigerian power grid. That can easily change if Nigeria were to tap into the vast wind energy available in those areas. And these are just some of the areas that Nigeria can tap on as an alternative to the prevailing power dynamics in the country. Now, this is my final slide. What is the pathway to development? What is the pathway to driving the development of development in Nigeria through the energy and power sector? What we need is a new power roadmap, and it needs to be developed in a manner that it emphasizes people rather than markets. That's very important. It must be people over markets, and renewables rather than fossils. It must emphasize people over markets, and it must emphasize renewables rather than fossil fuels. That is very, very important. The second is that with the central electricity grid unlikely to reach most communities in Nigeria because of the sheer land mass in Nigeria, okay? The central electricity grid cannot simply get to everyone. Then what the sector really needs is to be unbundled. Now, unbundling is not in the way the Electricity Regulatory Commission and the Bureau for Public Enterprises uses it. Unbundling is not by selling power infrastructure to businesses and private interests, but through decentralized renewable energy. We need to unbundle Nigeria's energy framework, energy grid, in such a way that it is a collection of decentralized renewable energy frameworks scattered around the entire country. This is the only way power can get to everybody. What we also need to do is that we need to incentivize the use of renewables. How do we do that? We do that through making it easier for local companies to manufacture renewables. We need to incentivize the use of renewables through eliminating. Are you still with me, please?
Yes, please conclude.
Oh, okay.
Conclude.
Yes.
Yes.
So we need to incentivize the use of renewables through ensuring that taxes are eliminated, tariffs are eliminated on solar products and other renewable products coming into the country. And we need to create incentives that allow local businesses invest in renewable energy generation and also manufacturing components for renewable energy. Currently, the 35% duty and tax on batteries, for instance, affects the ability of developers to bring in products at reasonable cost into the country. And that's why solar energy is still almost the exclusive preserve of the very wealthy in the country. Finally, the relations of power in the power sector needs to be deliberately changed in such a way that it emphasizes access to electricity for the people, by the people, and with the people, rather than for the businesses, by the businesses, in favor of the businesses. That matrix, which has controlled our thinking around the power sector, needs to change. The people need to take center stage in changing around the power sector in Nigeria. Thank you very much.